Right, here we go. Should be live here in just a moment. Close that. And boom. Look at that. All right, we're live. And hello, everybody. Hello, and welcome. I'm starting 2 minutes late. I know I've been going nonstop today. Very busy day, but I'm super excited. You guys may have noticed that today we're streaming on Centered America as well. So the Firebrand report is now being streamed live by Banner and Backbone and Centered America. I'm super proud and happy to bring you guys this information at Centered America, bring you guys this insight into geopolitics and all of the things that wrap into the larger world. People I know who are part of Centered America and the founder of Centered America, Sherrod Sweeney, great friend of mine. He does a phenomenal job of getting people the news, particularly in the United States, the best domestic newsletter, in my opinion. However, what I am happy to offer you guys is the geopolitical angle, that geopolitical scoop. What you get when you guys tune into the Firebrand report or you read the newsletter is that real focus on geopolitics. There's a big emphasis on the global picture, big picture kind of events, as well as tying all of these crazy pieces together in a time that is absolutely nuts. You get my analysis. So this is a geopolitics show. And I hope that you guys find it as important as I do in terms of understanding the world wherever you live, because that's really what it's all about is understanding the bigger picture so that we as a society collectively, as Americans, if you're in America, as Canadians, if you're in Canada, as anyone, if you're from France or Spain, it doesn't really matter. It's using these bigger global trends to get real news. At the Firebrand Project, we're committed to providing you with open source, verifiable reporting that answers the hard questions and provides you the full scope, that 6Q model, the who, what, when, where, why, how, so you guys get all the information that the journalists get when you draw your conclusions. So thank you all so very much for joining me. Thank you to Centered America and Sherrod for letting me bring you guys this show. And of course, thank you to Nick and everyone at Banner and Backbone for bringing me on to share this with you guys as well. This is going to be a interesting show. The way this format works is we do this Monday through Friday, and we'll hit a different region of the world. Monday we did Africa, Tuesday we did the United States and the North American continent. Wednesday we did the Middle East, and of course, we are going to be looking now at the Asia and the Indo-Pacific. So that's how we do it here. And you're going to leave with a pretty good idea of a regional scope, of the regional picture. This isn't about just giving you a singular news story. It's about helping you guys understand the overall trajectory, the region, and the outcomes that we could potentially be seeing in places in this region based on the geopolitics and the general momentum and diplomacy, war, etc. So with all of that said, if it's your first time here, or if you've been here already, hit the heart button. Hit it. Tap it. Bing, bing, bing. Tap the heart button. It helps out. If you're watching the live later as a recording, tap the heart button and hit that restack and leave a comment. But for now, it's time to get into the news, my friends. So I look forward to spending the next 50 or so minutes with you guys going over the state of everything in the Indo-Pacific and what's going on in the wider Asian continent. So we can't touch on everything, but we're going to touch on a whole lot more than you usually get. So with that said, my friends, let's go ahead and get into the news. So it is February 26th, 2026. My name is Shane. I'm reporting to you from the United States of America, not what it once was. And and the world is on fire. So let's talk about it. Everybody, welcome to the Firebrand Report, Indo-Pacific Asia Spotlight. So, the I I'm starting this out as a this is writing this out, and the first sentence is the Indo-Pacific is not stable. It's in rehearsal. Um, we've got China practicing the blockade of Taiwan. Information fog is sweeping the region. Purges are going on in China. Extensive purges going on in China. Something we've been covering as well that continues. Um, you know, Washington in the United States is really putting pressure on China, particularly with energy, that being oil. But what we're really seeing is this emerging operating system for the region. So you have, PLA drones are coming out of Hainan, and they're rehearsing these massed runs over the South China Sea. You have Japan rapidly militarizing. Japan is going through a massive shift right now, in terms of its internal politics, in terms of its stability. Um, it's their economy, all everywhere, all over the world is struggling to a degree, but Japan's at a very interesting inflection point, particularly with their new prime minister. She's very hardline against China. She wants to remove Article 5 of their constitution, which is basically the pacifism clause that they won't, go to war. And you can have an argument for that or not. From my perspective, the most concerning aspect, I would say, about her is her commitment to historical revisionism, and also her admiration of World War II Japanese war criminals. It's very odd, and it kind of speaks to a darker side there. But she just secured a massive, massive majority in the lower house in the Japanese parliament, and whatever she's going to do, she's going to do it, and it's going to happen. So, we'll see what happens in that regard. But with also Japan, militarizing so quickly, what we need to be looking at going into March is, a Taiwan scare is possible again. Especially if the United States uses a bunch of its military capabilities in Iran, we should be watching for Chinese escalation around Taiwan. You could see Korean provocation. North Korea has been acting up. They've been severing diplomatic ties with South Korea. Their military programs, we don't really know a whole lot about what exactly North Korea's military programs look like. But to assume that they're all garbage would probably be a mistake, right? So, this is one of those things where China in particular is setting up the infrastructure for the taking of Taiwan. So that's what we're going to start today. So, the first things we're seeing as we come into today, in terms of reporting, is we had a new pattern that's developing over the Taiwan Strait. It's a continuation of where they're using large drones. These are the PLA WZ-7 Soaring Dragon reconnaissance drones, and they are operating out of Hainan, which they have been running regular circuits across the South China Sea and near Taiwan, but they are digitally disguising themselves as civilian or foreign military aircraft. We can use open source flight tracking data, which shows that identifiers are being spoofed, and basically misrepresenting themselves to observers, and they are actually being spoofed to look like Belarusian IL-62 planes and others. So these planes that are basically camouflaged surveillance drones are flying regular routes around and in Taiwanese airspace. So this is basically a big overstepping of that. that sovereignty, right? They're trying to sneak in and gather intelligence, which is very clearly what they're doing. Institute for the Study of War, their February brief for China and Taiwan, they've spotted a wider pattern. Throughout January, the Chinese Coast Guard has been consistently conducting multiple incursions around Taiwan's Kinmen Islands and the Pratas Island, while the PRC fishing fleet has been mobilized as a maritime militia, which has increased their presence a lot. And we actually, last year, this was up before Operation Justice 2025, the last days of 2025, China demonstrated their capability to perform a entirely successful blockade of Taiwan. They were able to close Taiwan off from the wider world. It was a really big statement. But the big takeaway with all of this is when they're using their civilian fleet, they were actually performing exercises using the civilian maritime fleet as landing vessels. And there was Reuters satellite analysis that was able to confirm that this is actually what they were doing. So, this civilian fleet is more than capable of actually serving as a logistical arm of a Taiwanese invasion, or a Chinese invasion of Taiwan. Absolutely. Analysts are also looking at this from the perspective of one of the earlier January flights, where it was confirmed that they actually went into Taiwan's airspace. They're saying they're not doing it sometimes, but they're frequently using this spoofing, to get in there. So a couple quotes just to give you guys an idea from some of the sources we were looking at today. This is a quote directly from Reuters. A large Chinese military drone has conducted regular flights over the South China Sea in recent months while disguising its identity, with routes suggesting rehearsal for an operation over Taiwan. We have U.S. and News World Reports. They're talking about they do not appear to be exercises, but what Indo-Pacific Command has described as rehearsals for confrontation, any means the Chinese can employ to create confusion among their adversaries is advantageous. So, from where we're looking, I mean, the strategic move here is pretty clear. China's rehearsing a fog of war opening to a Taiwan crisis, right? You're seeing spoofed drones coming into the airspace with continuous airspace probes. You've got low-grade military maritime harassment from the Coast Guard and the civilian fleet. The question really remains is what is Washington's level of commitment to Taiwan? The president of the United States, he's going to be visiting with Xi Jinping here this month. And, I think that will be an interesting discussion. The United States and China are in the middle of a very intense kind of Cold War, if you will, over resources. And China really wants Taiwan. The United States obviously has a vested interest in Taiwan, if for no other reason than the heavy, heavy influence of billionaires and tech companies on the United States government, which is functionally at least integrated, at worst been co-opted by these companies. But with the Epstein files and everything as well, it seems like a lot muddier than that. But basically anyone with a dime gets a little bit of American influence, it seems. Well, the thing is, a lot of these companies, particularly the tech backers, they need Taiwan. Taiwan makes all the chips. All their data centers need Taiwan. So if China were to take Taiwan, they would pretty much control all of the semiconductor manufacturing for the world. And the United States is in direct competition with China over AI development. So, that meeting is going to be interesting. The United States is in a very weak position. They like to talk the talk, but from just a objective perspective, there's a lot of it's not the world is not going the way of the United States right now. So I always talk about momentum and everything, but it's really important to talk about that momentum, and momentum is not in favor of the United States at the moment. Chinese politics, though, in particular, have been very unstable, but not in the sense that like it's falling apart as much as Xi Jinping is cleaning house. You know, these these forces that are conducting the rehearsals, they are being actively reconstruction. They're the People's Liberation Army is in the middle of what you would call a reorg. Xi Jinping has removed just about everyone in China's recent military leadership, including the most highly ranked military official in China, other than Xi Jinping himself. Uh, he's removed the defense minister, senior officers from the rocket force, logistics, and equipment departments in a typical Xi Jinping anti-corruption campaign. So essentially, he does this from time to time, where this is how he purges people who could potentially be dissenters and installs loyalists. It's how Xi Jinping is so good at keeping control of China, because he's very, very good at handing out jobs to people who are loyal to him and making sure he gets rid of them before they stab him in the back. It's something that a lot of dictators don't do very well. But Xi Jinping, for now, at least his method is working. We had a recent study by Reuters that was able to conclude that this purge has taken a toll on command and readiness and has disrupted chains of command. So this delays procurement and is creating a climate of fear within the military. Xi Jinping actually made an address recently, and he called the past year unusual and extraordinary, framing intensified political education and anti-corruption as central tasks for the armed forces. The ISW, the Institute for the Study of War, their broader China analysis has noted that this political tightening is happening alongside expanded PLA deployments and exercises around Taiwan and broader Indo-Pacific power projection, raising the probability that we could have inexperienced commanders that will be running increasingly complex operations. Xi is effectively betting on political loyalty and control over nuclear and missile assets. He's basically saying that matters more than the institutional competence of the military when a crisis hits. So for everyone else, this is a really dangerous plan, but for Xi Jinping, this is the best way for him to consolidate power and maintain it. So in that regard, we're really seeing a lot of this internal shakeup inside of China. There's a couple ways I look at this when I'm looking at these purges, and I would say the first is most significant in that the timing. Some people are saying this is a good thing for Taiwan in the short term. Sure. I would agree. I think in the long term, this is very bad for Taiwan, because this is my analysis. This is what I think. I think that when you see Xi Jinping starting this purge, and you saw the intense escalation around Taiwan in response to basically a very aggressive United States, this was China showing the world that it could and will turn off the entire supply chain for technology. And this scared the shit out of a lot of people and the supply chain. And we saw huge losses. I mean, this is every time they do this is very expensive for the wider world. This is not, when you shut down Taiwan, everything stops. Every little semiconductor, everything goes through Taiwan. It's huge. And that's why the United States, whilst it doesn't even acknowledge Taiwan like as a country, is sworn to protect has sworn to protect Taiwan because it is of immense economic value. What I think we could be seeing here is maybe Xi Jinping is either noticed some dissent in the ranks and decided that he needed to clean house, to make sure that he would maintain power, because understand, of course, Xi Jinping's main priority is to maintain power. It's not the viability of the military. It's not the ability to take Taiwan. It's not, it's to stay in power. That's what Xi Jinping wants. So when looking at it from that perspective, one of two things came across my mind. The first being, was the military itself actually not willing or being resistant to actually attacking Taiwan? Or was there some sort of dissent in the ranks? I tend to gravitate, for whatever reason, I think it might be a thing where Xi Jinping just wants to make the decisions for the military. It could be a thing where he wants to attack Taiwan and they were giving him pushback. So he said, okay, I'm going to purge the military. Because what's certain, what's absolute, 100%, is that any attack by China on Taiwan is going to hurt. Taiwan's entire defense strategy is make China bleed. Make them bleed. Because the defense strategy is hedged on U.S. and other allies' support, particularly Japan and other Indo-Pacific nations. Excuse me. Oh, good. Other Indo-Pacific nations, right? So that's where we're seeing the most pressure here. Is we don't really know. It's quite indecisive. Not will, but even can the United States effectively back Taiwan if China decides they want to take Taiwan? And with what they're doing in Iran, it's very questionable if they'll be able to really conduct any kind of large-scale military operation if they continue along the path that they're currently on. So, at the same time, you've got Tokyo and a Indo-Pacific Energy Summit that's coming up here in March from the 14th to the 15th. The National Energy Dominance Council, which is going to be headed by Donald Trump, is going to co-host the first Indo-Pacific Energy Security Ministerial and Business Forum in Tokyo with the Japanese government. Sometimes Reuters is reporting that the U.S. Interior Secretary Doug Burgum, who is a council chair, and the Energy Secretary Chris Wright and EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin will lead the U.S. delegation. I don't like that because, like I was saying in the beginning, it's kind of icky. Right? We know the United States is run by what is verifiably, objectively true and known to be a criminal, a pedophile, a rapist. We know those things. Those are objectively true because we've seen the Epstein files. So it's always crazy to me, too, when you see these foreign governments effectively welcoming these people who are clearly criminals and giving them this treatment. I can't imagine the people of Japan are stoked that their government is treating with these people. But I will say that Sanai Takaichi's her position is very pro-Trump, and it could be a thing where the United States doesn't feel like it can effectively deter China, so they're going to use Japan. It's possible. But Japan's got a long way to go before they're able to go toe-to-toe with China. So this meeting is on energy cooperation. Of course, this is a constant discussion for these people with their data centers and their competition with China. Tokyo has told Washington that it cannot simply just stop buying Russian liquid natural gas without destabilizing its own system, which is highlighting this trade-off between sanctions, orthodoxy, and energy security. We've got regional reporting underscoring how the Indo-Pacific in particular, you're seeing states scramble to diversify liquid natural gas supply, as well as critical mineral sources, with Japan, India, and Southeast Asia capitals balancing price, reliability, and strategic alignment, right? So China has a 90% monopoly on the world's supply of rare earth minerals. It's got an even higher monopoly on the actual refining of those minerals into useful things. Uh, this is something that they've made very, very clear. This scramble around the world, why it's happening is because China has shown by how it's treating the United States using trade policy that it can just turn off the faucet when it comes to essential inputs into industrial manufacturing. And it's done that with everything that goes into tech, that goes into large infrastructure, particularly power. All of these things they've done, and it's really affected this. So, the cooperation with Japan as well might be a attempt to get around some of these limitations. But China hasn't really changed its strategy in terms of trade since the beginning of this year, when they put the controls in on steel and silver, which have been devastating. So we'll see a lot of these kind of relationships and these conversations. It's about countries in the region trying to get around the Chinese hegemony over rare earth minerals and their production, refinement, etc. The unfortunate kind of truth of the matter is that even if they all start today, they're too far behind. Even if the U.S. had everything it needed, it would take a long time. It would take 3 years for them to be able to replace even 10% of the capacity that they've been importing from China. Now, it's going to take way longer than that, because that's assuming that they have access to the things they need to buy, that the inputs to build the replacement infrastructure, right? So it's always a matter of who has what. It's not what you want to do. I saw a great analogy. It was the United States is betting on molecules, is betting on elements, betting on the United States is betting on atoms, and China is betting on electrons, right? So China is saying that I'm going to withhold from you the basic fundamental structures of what you're trying to do. And the equivalent of what the United States is doing to Cuba with oil, I want you to think of it that way, except for China to the United States manufacturing and military industrial capacity. Really upsets these guys who are in charge. They're all very wealthy. They control the manufacturing industry, the defense industry, the tech industry. They don't really have a lot of regard for anyone else other than themselves and their business. So it's very it's compounding in the sense that it's getting worse and worse and worse, and you're seeing them try more and more ways to get around these limitations. I'm sure this summit is just that, but the reality is, I think globally, everyone's just placating the United States, and kind of waiting to see if it collapses or not. The EU is punching the crap out of the United States right now, from a geopolitical. Like, the U.S. is just getting smacked around. I think the world has realized that the U.S. government is actually just a reflection of the U.S. private uber wealthy class. I mean, there's really just no denying at this point. It's not only does the Epstein files tell us this, but also the policies themselves and the treatment of the American people. You have people literally being executed, extrajudicially as citizens. You have people being extrajudicially in U.S. waters or international waters. So, it's just really obvious that these people are not interested in, the wider interests of the region, and therefore they're not interested in geopolitics. They're interested in self-enrichment. So the world doesn't want them to be that. And I think we're, especially in 2026, as we head into this first half of the year, one of the things I am more confident about is that we're about to see what it looks like when the entire world decides that it's pretty much over America being the boss. Because they were kind of okay with it as long as America wasn't too evil. Like, as long as they weren't too evil, everyone would just let it go. But at this point, the America views everyone as a means for extraction and wealth. So it's making China look like a better partner. And China is making the trade deals verifiable. You can see them all. But there's a lot going on in the Indo-Pacific, more so, and I want to talk about what's going on in the Bashi Channel. So this is the Philippines and Japan and the United States are drilling for a blockade scenario. So this week, Japan's Kyodo News reported that the Philippines, Japan, and the United States have concluded a 4-day naval drill near the Bashi Channel between the Philippines and Taiwan. The exercise included anti-submarine warfare, surface warfare, search and rescue training, and was billed as improving interoperability in the face of intensifying security challenges. So the drills are overlapping at the same point, overlap with the same corridors that we were talking about earlier with the Hainan-based WZ-7 drones, as well as other PLA aircraft that are that are pushing into the Western Pacific. Basically, in other words, both sides are now rehearsing in the same place. So it's geopolitical chicken. The U.S. has moved a lot of its resources actually from around Japan, from around the region itself, and has significantly weakened its presence in that area to support its intentions around Iran. The last I will say is for the Korean Peninsula itself. Things look pretty quiet on the surface, but there's a more fragile pattern we're seeing here. The U.S. and South Korea will begin large-scale joint drills on March 9th in celebration of my birthday. I called them. I said, hey, will you guys hold joint military drills for my birthday? And they said, absolutely. We thought you would like that. So we're going to, show up for North Korea to show them how big and strong we are. No, I don't think they did it for that, but I digress here. This is part of a regular spring exercise cycle that North Korea frequently calls a invasion rehearsal. Regional reporting does indicate that market prices in North Korea have spiked sharply in February. Pyongyang rice prices reached 19,600 won per kilogram on February 15th, which is up 30% in 2 weeks, while corn jumped 87% per kilogram, and fuel prices are up 20%. So you're seeing, tightening control around North Korea as they're cracking down on smuggling and trying to minimize the amount of foreign currency there as well. So, you're looking at this mix. You have economic stress, you have high-profile drills, you have North Korea having cut certain diplomatic channels between South Korea and North Korea in recent weeks. All of this that we're seeing here really shapes up to me in that maybe people see some opportunity here. The thing about 2026 is in 2025, you could make better predictions because you were still operating off of a system that did exist, right? Like there was some remnants of a system. The system itself was being destroyed, but you could use it to predict certain things. The level of instability that we're seeing right now is so dramatic that it's really hard to say like if you're a country and you're looking for regional power And the United States, which is, the person you had to watch out for if you wanted to do something and the US didn't like it, you had to not do it. But now the United States is moved, 40% of its, aircraft capacity to the Middle East. It's moved what very well could be over 50%, I would say probably more, of its Patriot anti-air interceptor batteries and high altitude defense batteries to the Middle East. If I'm China, if I'm Taiwan, if I'm China, if I'm North Korea, if I'm India, and I want to do something, now's the time, because all of the things that would have usually caused them to pause no longer apply. And it's the United States who's trying to make a deal with everyone. Everyone's not trying to make a deal with the United States. These little things matter. These distinctions matter. The fact that Europe is moving much, much, much closer to China, that they've chose China, that they are decoupling from the US from a defense industrial complex perspective, that is, and moving closer to China to tighten its control over its supply chain, particularly guarantee they get access to rare earth minerals, metals, all the things that China can say, yeah, no, you don't get that anymore. So, that's why I find it harder and harder to, or even for me to want to say, like, I think this is going to happen. Like, there's a lot of things that could happen. It could be one of many things, but I just as I'm looking around these days, the vibe of the hour could be, but what are you willing to risk? That's the difference. Is where we are now is, what is that individual willing to risk? The United States has demonstrated it's willing to risk its position as the leader of the global hegemony. It's proven that, and it has absolutely continued down that route. What that says to everyone else is, you might as well, if you're going to risk it, right? Like, that is how it's going to work. That's how things go. If a country like, I don't know, Rwanda says, I bet you we could use a proxy group to annex all of the most mineral-rich regions of the Democratic Republic of the Congo, then they do it. Because it's the environment is, you can take the risk and deal with the consequences, because there's nothing to lose, because the order that previously existed is gone. So what you're looking at is this weird space and time where a country has to decide where they are going to sit in the new world order. More so, they have to decide, do they want to live in a world under a new form of American hegemony and essentially a techno-feudal capitalist society that is owned by very rich people? And this appeals to autocracies. This appeals very heavily to the, petrostates, right? The Gulf nations that are all in these, weird pseudo monarchies. This appeals to a lot of these Southeast Asian countries where they have dictators or, fake pseudo democracies that are, all rigged. This is, everyone has a choice, and you see an alignment. But the reality is it's a lot of the less wealthy nations deciding to align. You basically have the really, really wealthy Middle Eastern states that are aligning with the United States. But even that is in question right now with their direction and their decisions in Iran, is the stability of that relationship. But like the Board of Peace, you've got, your Eastern Bloc, your what are they called? The Caucasus, those East Asian Caucasus countries, You have the Middle East in terms of Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Egypt, those countries. And then you have the rest of the Western democracies that have decided to go the other way, and Canada. And if I'm picking a team, now I'm picking the other team, right? I'm not picking the Board of Peace. I'm picking the pro-democracy bloc. And that bloc is actually very clear. Now, we'll see how united they become, but we've seen the framework all get built in the last 5 or 6 months. And all you have to do to really confirm that is look at the trajectory of global trade deals and the realignment. All of these same countries that are going to go to this Indo-Pacific energy summit here for Trump, okay, they are the same countries that have made deals with other countries like Europe, right? Okay, so when you have these countries that are like, oh yeah, we want to work with the United States, or we want to work with these people, but at the same time, it's in our best interest to work with the other guy. Everyone's doing this twofer thing with the US. They turn around, they smile, they shake hands, they tell the pedophile they like him a lot and that, he should keep doing what he's doing, that his diaper doesn't smell. And then they basically will turn around and make a much better trade deal, like India has made with the European Union. And Canada has made deals with China. The best way to punish the United States is economically, and there is and has been a strategy for that. I actually think now that it will be outside influence, particularly geopolitical pressure on the U.S. economy, as well as potentially sanctions and basically just creating a pariah state out of the United States that will topple the regime. I am betting more on that at the moment than domestic resistance. As an American, I don't like to say that. It doesn't make me happy to say that, but I do believe that the critical point for weakness at which you could see a populace regain control of its democracy is the pressure will be coming more from the outside than the inside, because the people in America are effectively wage slaves. They're locked and limited by their economy. That economy allows them to be enslaved in effectively what is sharecropping in a modern age, like basically credit traps. With that, right, that pressure, the economy can't be destroyed from inside, but it can be destroyed from the outside much more easily. A boycott by all of the people in America on Target is going to suck for Target, but it'll suck more for Target if suddenly they are looking at a 30% duty on all of their imports. That affects their bottom line. Us not showing up to buy for 2 weeks doesn't hurt them as much. Their system has proven to be quite resilient against economic boycotts. So what it is very vulnerable to is a global decoupling from the U.S. economic sanctions system. The countries I think are most likely to put sanctions on the United States, I would say it would be the EU first. I would say Canada, but I think it's smarter for Canada to wait until someone else has sanctioned the U.S., or at least wait until the U.S. has. I think the world is going to wait and see what happens in Iran, because that's going to determine how strong and how scared of the United States people actually need to be. The real concern should be is if the US's ability to project foreign power is potentially going to be severely curtailed by a conflict with Iran, and in that case, The bigger concern in America would be if they can't project power outwardly and they're failing outside, they're going to pivot and use extreme force internally. That's just how it works. So my hope is that, the economic power and the collaborative actions of the wider world, including how they're prosecuting, looking into the Epstein files and dismantling that network. But we are definitely seeing a United States that we've never seen before, and its absence in the Indo-Pacific and China's influence on the United States, because no matter what happens, the United States is not comfortable sailing its ships anywhere close to Taiwan. It shouldn't be, because even if everyone in the rocket force sucks, China has so many anti-ship missiles. I think that there's been a lag effect as well in terms of missile technology. And I think there was a period of time where the world was betting on basically ballistic missiles. Everyone had decided that the move was, if you're an advanced nation, you're going to invest in really, really expensive missiles that you can blow people up from really, really far away. That was the move. Like, everyone should do that. We all build missiles. We can all send our nukes around the world. Right? You have nuclear power. And everyone did this. And then, like, it was Iran. They're like, what if we just made really cheap drones and like blew up your really, really expensive things that you made to counter these expensive missiles? I'm telling you, quantity has a quality of its own. And don't let the propaganda convince you anything otherwise than, if someone launches several hundred drones and half a dozen to 10 or so ballistic missiles at an aircraft carrier, don't you think for a second that there's not a real good chance that that thing ends up at the bottom of the ocean? And that's where we really see the Indo-Pacific and all of these things. It's not necessarily the US's presence. I think more so it's the potential for the United States absence that is causing a lot of this tension. Because I'm worried about the United States. To be honest, for the wider world, I think it's better if the US gets hamstringed and can't conduct effective military operations. Like, if they want to use all of their interceptors so they can't go be aggressive elsewhere, I think that's a better thing. I don't think the US military should be out in the world at all right now. I think the US military should be at home, protecting the people of the United States. For example, we've been experiencing horrible weather in the US, hundreds of deaths from super freezing temperatures, potential mass murder of, but it's a genocide, potential genocide of ICE detainees over the early weeks of February, when you saw the Southeast freeze to the core, and these people were being held in tents in these areas exposed to lethal hypothermic temperatures, right? So we've got a ton of problems in the U.S. And the military is not meant to exclusively to serve elsewhere. Like, the National Guard can't cut it. They should be helping people here, and they should be fulfilling their oath. But the United States did, in fact, experience a very effective military purge in early 2025. And it's, I think, one of the greatest tragedies in U.S. history that a lot of these leaders in our military, they chose to resign and step down instead of, putting their foot down. And ultimately, the safeguard of a apolitical armed forces is not something that exists in the United States at the moment. So the U.S. has always been a really big stabilizer in the region. If they just leave, they're just not there. Like, that changes everything. And like Japan in its current state could not fight Taiwan, or could not win against China. The Philippines and Japan together could not beat China. The Philippines, Japan, and India would still struggle to even match China, even kinda, in a naval engagement. There is just so much in terms of volume when it comes to the Chinese military. And to be honest, if this purge that we're seeing with Xi Jinping makes it so that they can be incredibly decisive, when it happens, it happens. Will it be in 2026? I think there's a really good chance China invades Taiwan in 2026. I think a lot of it's going to hedge on what happens in the Middle East, because everyone's kind of just waiting and seeing what's going to happen, including for the United States. They're waiting for something. They're clearly not confident right now. So we'll see what they do. And of course, if you want to get updates on those things, like what's going on in Iran and the Middle East, if you want to get more information on what's going on in Africa or all around the world on a given day, you should, of course, scan that QR code right here next to me, or you should click up on my little name there where it says Shane Urich or the Firebrand Project. Make sure you subscribe there. If you scan the QR code, though, on my screen, it takes you to a link tree, which will take you to all of our different social media platforms as well. So you can go there. On TikTok today, I just posted a brief explainer on everything that's going on with the boat shooting between, bit off too much, always a little bit. We are always biting off too much. So, we've got all kinds of different platforms you go on. I put something on TikTok today talking about the shooting of 4 Cuban nationals, potentially on a boat from Florida, which is a huge issue. So you can get the whole breakdown on that situation and the tension between Cuba and the United States there on my TikTok. So if you're on TikTok, you can go there too. But all in all, we're looking at an Asia and an Indo-Pacific that's very in flux. There's a lot of other stuff going on there, particularly around India. It's a very interesting situation that I think is one to watch for sure. The potential for India to shut off the water supply to Pakistan is crazy, a crazy thought. But there's just a ton going on, and we are seeing a continuation of a more and more aggressive China with a less and less certain presence of U.S. support in the region. So we are going to keep an eye on that going forward. So if you want to get this kind of geopolitical news, if you want to get this information every day from a source that is going to bring you verified, transparent, and totally verifiable global geopolitical reporting, that's what I do here. So whether you're watching me for the first time on Centered America, or you're watching me on Banner and Backbone, or you're a longtime watcher of the Firebrand Project, make sure you go ahead and subscribe today. Make sure you scan that QR code, or you go into the article beneath this video and subscribe. Click on the little Linktree link and make sure you go and check out those other socials. If you can become a paid subscriber, now would be a great time to do that. I really need you guys' support. We're working on all these really cool things, building out, getting you access to new kinds of content. And it might be a little slow on the content side for the TikTok and the Instagram and whatnot for a couple more days while I'm getting all the gears together. But when it's going, you guys are going to be getting like really great access to consistent news across multiple channels, right, in different ways. So I'm really excited about what that's going to look like. And I think that I'm going to be bringing you guys something special. So make sure you subscribe to get access and make sure you guys know what's going on when that happens. So all that said, guys, please support me in any way you can. Support, support me support me, of course, support Centered America, become a subscriber there, support Banner and Backbone. Thank you to both of them for allowing me to bring you guys this information here on Substack through their channels. And it's been a pleasure talking to you today. It's been a pleasure sharing with you guys the situation around the world. I will be back tomorrow with some more geopolitical reporting for you. So if you want to catch you want to get the scoop on these geopolitical stories, if you want to get transparent, open source, verifiable reporting, the kind of reporting that the reporters use to report to you, that's what I want to do. I want to bring you the same level of information so that everyone, if they want, can be a citizen journalist, at the very least, be as informed as one. So thank you all so very much for joining me today. And I hope you come back when the letter comes out. Make sure you like it, maybe forward it to somebody else, but I'll be here tomorrow. And until then, make sure you do the one thing I ask of you, which is take what we talked about in this newsletter today and take it out and have these conversations in your life. That's really the best thing you can do. Is I want to give you guys the open source information, the verifiable information, so you can go and share these stories where you think it's pertinent in your communities, whatever country you're in, whatever walk of life you're in, whoever you're going to see that day. That's the goal. So thank you all so very much. And I will see you all later. Burn bright, resist, and I'll see you.